In Nepal, a generation raised online just demonstrated that a digital revolution can swiftly manifest in the real world. This is the story of how Nepal's Gen Z, fueled by anger over corruption and a sudden social media ban, brought down their government in a chaotic 48 hours. For years, frustration had been simmering among Nepal's youth. They observed a political class enriching itself while offering few economic opportunities. This anger was amplified online, where images of politicians' children, often called Nepo babies, showcased extravagant lifestyles, starkly contrasting with the struggles of ordinary citizens. A political analyst described the nation as sitting on gunpowder, just waiting for a spark. That spark came on September 4, 2025. The government, led by Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli, abruptly banned 26 popular social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and YouTube. The official reason was their failure to register with the government. However, for many young Nepalis, this was a blatant attack on free speech and an attempt to silence growing dissent. For a country where many families depend on money sent from relatives working abroad, these platforms were also vital lifelines for communication. What happened next was an explosion of fury. On September 8th, protests began peacefully. Thousands of young people, many still in their school uniforms, filled the streets of the capital, Kathmandu. But the peace didn't last. Security forces responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and even live ammunition. The situation turned deadly, and the protests spiraled out of control. Enraged by the violent crackdown, demonstrators fought back. Government buildings became targets. Parts of the Singha Durbar, the main administrative center of the government, were set on fire. The Parliament building and the Supreme Court were also torched. The private homes of the President, the Prime Minister, and other high-ranking officials were not spared from the flames. The city was in chaos. Faced with a full-blown insurrection, the government crumbled. On September 9th, just 48 hours after the protests began, Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli resigned. Other ministers followed suit, leaving a sudden power vacuum. The army was deployed onto the streets of Kathmandu to try and restore some semblance of order. What makes this story unique is how the protesters organized. In a truly 21st century move, they turned to a platform primarily known for gaming. Using the chat app Discord, a youth group called Hamin Nepal created a server named Youth Against Corruption. This digital space became their headquarters. They used virtual private networks, or VPNs, to get around the government's social media ban and coordinate their actions. But they didn't just use Discord to organize protests, they used it to practice a form of digital democracy. In an unprecedented event, over 10,000 participants joined debates on the server to choose a new interim leader for the country. They shortlisted 5 candidates and then held a virtual poll. Their choice was Sushila Karki, Nepal's first ever female Chief Justice. This process wasn't perfect. Organizers had to deal with infiltrators who tried to disrupt the voting, including some who wanted to restore the old monarchy. The perspectives on this whirlwind revolution are, as you can imagine, starkly different. The ousted Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli had initially mocked the protesters and their Gen Z identity, a move that clearly backfired. For the protesters themselves, the feelings are complex. One organizer, Tanuja Pandey, spoke of a mix of pride in what they achieved, but also trauma, regret, and anger over the violence and destruction. The newly selected interim Prime Minister, Sushila Paki, has pledged to restore trust and ensure a fair transition. Her government has already promised to give money to the families of those who were killed during the protests. The international community is watching closely. The UN Secretary-General has expressed deep sadness over the loss of life and has called for a full investigation. The aftermath is a nation grappling with immense challenges. The human cost is high, with reports of over 70 people killed and thousands injured. The economic cost is staggering, with the destruction of government property estimated to be in the trillions of Nepali rupees. A new political landscape is emerging from the ashes. New elections have been called for March 2026, and the rise of non-traditional youth-backed figures could permanently change the country's politics. This instability is a major concern for Nepal's giant neighbors, India and China, who both have significant strategic interests in the region. The events in Nepal are now being compared to other recent youth-led movements in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh.
It suggests a growing trend in South Asia, where digitally native generations are no longer willing to accept the old ways of doing politics. They have the tools, the motivation, and the anger to challenge the established order, proving that a revolution can be organized and a government can fall in just 48 hours.